According to research conducted for the study, as noted in our references, there are 3 components of the first-year student success. We propose a 4th, crisis management. So in doing so, we want to sort of engage the audience in discussing, maybe for 3 minutes, crisis management.
We chose to use Astin's IEO model over other models to frame our approach to addressing student success and persistence because this model is typically used in student persistence research and by student affairs. Its tenets are that student success and achievement are a function of student demographics and identifiers, otherwise referred to as inputs, and institutional factors, otherwise referred to as the environment. These elements together affect the potential the student has to produce the desired outcome, which we are calling academic success. For the sake of brevity, inputs are comprised of the demographics, skills, and attributes with which students enter the learning environment, such as age, marital status, and parental status. As external factors affect the student's demographic or input, institutional support made available to the student can contribute to the student's ability to produce the desired outcome in the face of an external factor. In our case, the desired outcome is academic success, which is a culmination of student persistence, retention, academic achievement, student learning, and ultimately program and degree completion. We propose that as external factors affect students, faculty and staff can follow established procedures to offer institutional support as a part of the learning environment to help students overcome these external factors, which we are calling crises, to produce the desired outcome, which is satisfactory academic persistence towards program or degree completion. Institutional support directly affects student persistence towards program or degree completion. In fact, support services are essential to improving persistence. When crises happen in students' lives, what recourse do they have? Obviously, they can choose to either withdraw or continue to pursue their studies. The few that do persist usually only do so solely based on grit or considerable intestinal fortitude. Rhetorically speaking, though, how many more students would be retained if they could be connected to the right resources and felt the support that they needed by their university? High attrition rates affect persistence of the institution, be it a nonprofit or a for-profit institution. Lack of knowledge of student services, family illnesses, and caring for children are some of the reasons that students drop out. By providing additional support and by making students aware of resources available as an approach to crisis management, institutions can potentially lower attrition rates and increase student persistence towards completion. So for the purpose of this presentation, we have concluded that the concept of crisis management entails a process of gaining knowledge, assessing the situation, managing spillover effects, and helping to prevent the reoccurrence of the same unpredictable incident, which may occur with our students. This process involves creating a greater awareness of resources available to students through the use of a standard procedure, assessing the student's need, and making the proper referral as necessary. I'll now hand the presentation back over to Alvenetta.
Based on Astin's IEO model and the flow of completion, it's very important as professionals and students that we have a system in place to help students overcome and manage crises. We propose 2 recommendations. Step 1, the 6 R's to relief and retention, and Step 2, the Crisis Intervention Resource Guide. We'll go through both of these as we progress through the slides. Next, we have the 6 R's to relief and retention. The first one we'll take a look at is read. Read the situation. Identify an anxiety or abnormal behaviors for students. Then we'll go to research. Reach out to students to investigate if or how assistance is needed, as well as identifying which university services may be helpful to the students. Reaffirm. Provide comfort to students, assuring him or her that the university is a community that supports our own. Resource. If applicable, provide students with resources to assist them. Refer. Connect students with departments within or without the university to bring additional services as needed, and closure. And the last one, reassess. After agreed upon time, follow up with the student to either bring closure or repeat steps as necessary. Now I'll turn it back over to Dr. Pitt.
Part of my task in developing this presentation was to find out what other educational organizations were doing to support their students in crisis. And I'm going to be very honest with you. It was very difficult to locate organizations that were addressing this problem. Some student service professionals sent me to websites they created to help students in crisis, but most were quite limited, and some were even blocked from me as a faculty member or even as a visitor to their site. So the call to action is clear. Universities need to provide easy-to-access resources for students in crisis. Serving a worldwide population online involves a larger identification of resources along with establishing the training and procedures needed to support our students in their time of need. Now, I'm going to take a look and share with you a training example that was developed for the staff and faculty from the University of St. Thomas. The first page is really a nice indicator of basic instructions for faculty and staff, along with the actions that can be taken to support students in crisis. So, you know, they're real common sense pieces like stay safe, trust your instincts, share what you know. These are all very, very obvious and things that we should be doing to help these students, as well as the most important component, which is follow up. And then you see on the right side, there's a ton of resources for faculty and staff to access. Now, if we go down to the second page, you'll see that these are possible scenarios that faculty and staff can identify. So it's almost like a scenario fact. If you feel that the person seems depressed, here are some ways of being able to identify that. Here are some ways of being able to respond to it. Here's a resource to refer students to, and yourself to report to the appropriate office so that students can be helped. And there are 2 pages, if you scroll down, Sean, listing all of these scenarios. And then let's take a look at the final page. And this has very important information about the policies and the procedures, the federal policies, the institutional policies that we all need to comply by. So these policies are important in framing our responses. Thank you, Sean. You can go back to the slides. So in addition to this training piece, what's also needed is a website where students can go and get more information on resources. So there should be links to organizations that help others in a time of need, such as the American Red Cross or even the ASPCA, so students in crisis can take care of their pets in an emergency. An online university has an additional challenge in trying to support students from all over the world. So some links that we could establish could be worldwide organizations that can help people. It's really difficult to know how to help a student in crisis, but with the resources provided, such as the example from the University of St. Thomas, along with an easy-to-find website for students listing general resources, we can play a much stronger role in supporting students in crisis.
Thanks. This is Bill Schulz. I want to thank you guys. This is very, very interesting. Melanie and I have been here in the office taking notes because we don't have answers ourselves right away at the fingertips on what we would do at Walden if there were issues. I think it's very interesting. You talk about the faculty and what faculty can and should do. I've been teaching at Walden for about a dozen years and thankfully haven't had too many incidents of this sort. But it's a really interesting twofold thing. I think you're absolutely right that we need to do a better job of preparing our faculty to be there, to listen, and to then train them to steer our students to the appropriate folks that are really experts in helping our students. So I think that's a takeaway for me, is to help our faculty learn to listen, take notes, be very mindful and supportive, and then to find resources that we do have and help the student find those expert resources. I can say that we have a service. I'm going to go figure out in the classroom how you access it. But every student, we have a service that students can reach out to, which you would be able to talk with a counselor. And that counselor would then be able to refer you to specific specialized resources in your immediate area. So we do have that service available to all of our students. But you bring up some really good points about thinking about a care team. And certainly one of the takeaways that we're going to have is to have some conversations with our academic leadership to see how we can make those services more available to students. So I want to thank you for this really stimulating conversation. See if others have some good questions for you.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. There are several questions that are popping up here in the chat. We'll try to get to as many as we can. I did see a question about the 6 R's to relief. If we could just back up to that slide just for more explanation and to reiterate those different pieces. The 6 R's to relief and retention. And so these steps don't necessarily have to go in this particular order. In a perfect situation, they kind of would, but this is a crisis, right? So they may not. So our goal then is to make sure that we are reading the situation and just really assessing what's going on, identifying what the anxiety or the atypical behavior for that student may be. And then from there, we're going to continue to research or investigate to find out more. Sometimes you may have to do a follow-up question or a follow-up call just to kind of get more clarity on what exactly is going on. The reaffirmation is just to make sure that that student is receiving the fact that we have support within our community. We mentioned about using the tone of voice and the positivity in the voice. That's to reassure that student that we are in full support of them and going to provide resources to help them. And that takes us to our next step, which are the resources, right? In order to provide that student with the list, like what's example or exemplified in that resource guide. So that may be CAPS, or that may be contacting the dean or academic advising or whoever else might be the perfect resource for this particular type of situation. And then also referring, because sometimes it may be outside of that professor's scope or capability to handle one-on-one, so we may need to make a referral. And then lastly, the reassessing is just to follow up with that student, making that touch back, and also seeing if we have adequately addressed that problem. And if not, then we proceed through those steps again in order to make sure that we do bring some closure to that situation. I hope that answers your question regarding explaining the 6 R's.